In our world today, using a credit card feels modern, ordinary. But what if this system actually began 5,000 years ago? The Sumerians, creators of the first cities, the first writing, were also the first people to record debt. Back then, temple priests acted much like banks do today. Farmers borrowed seeds they couldn't afford and repaid their loans with labor, grain, or freedom. These clay tablets recorded interest rates, repayment dates, even penalties. They might be the earliest versions of the credit agreements we sign today. From the fields they plowed to the tablets they carved, the foundation of our financial world may have been built here. Humanity was born into debt. Humanity grew through debt. And this story begins in ancient Sumer. Now, let's open the tablets of the past together. In the cradle of civilization, across the plains of ancient Mesopotamia, the roots of the world's first economic system were planted in the soil. More than 6,000 years ago, Sumerian farmers learned to control the unpredictable floods of the Tigris and Euphrates. Through canals, levees, and irrigation channels carved out of clay and mud, they transformed desert land into fertile fields capable of supporting an entire civilization. Golden fields of barley and wheat grew where barren soil once lay, producing harvests that fed workers, priests, and officials across the earliest cities. To the Sumerians, this was not merely human effort. It was divine order. They believed that Enlil made the earth fertile by separating heaven and earth, and Enki revealed the knowledge of farming. Tools such as the hoe and plow were described as gifts from the gods. Yet behind the poetry was a sophisticated agricultural science. Oxen pulling wooden plows, farmers coordinating irrigation schedules, and scribes recording harvest yields on clay tablets. These innovations created food surpluses that allowed societies to grow beyond simple survival and begin to specialize. This surplus economy sparked a transformation. Farmers became merchants, builders, brewers, and administrators. Cities like Uruk and Lagash grew into bustling urban centers where labor was organized, resources were counted, and trade flourished. In many ways, the structure of agriculture that sustains modern economies today, record-keeping, coordinated irrigation, resource allocation, began here. When we look at modern farmland from an airplane or examine global grain markets, we are witnessing echoes of Sumer's earliest experiments in agriculture. Their methods laid the foundation for every economic system that followed. As Sumerian cities expanded, the need to manage resources beyond individual households grew. Taxation emerged as one of the earliest tools of governance. Farmers delivered grain, livestock, or labor to the temples and palaces as their tax obligations. The system was known as bala, meaning exchange, and it ensured that each region contributed according to its abundance, grain from one area, wool or timber from another. This structure created a network of obligations that connected the cities of Sumer into a functioning economic whole. Inside temple complexes, scribes recorded every delivery on clay tablets. These records reveal the scale of Sumer's administrative system. Thousands of entries logging grain shipments, livestock counts, and labor assignments. Taxes supported the priests who oversaw rituals, the craftsmen who built temples, and the workers who dug critical irrigation canals. Much like today's taxes fund public infrastructure, Sumerian taxes sustained the networks that made agriculture and trade possible. This system was not simply bureaucratic, it carried moral weight. Kings proclaimed that fair measures and honest taxation were decreed by the gods themselves. Stelae show rulers boasting of maintaining just taxation and balanced distribution. Yet human nature has changed little. Tablets contain complaints from farmers who felt overburdened or mistreated, echoing the frustrations of taxpayers thousands of years later. Still, the system functioned. It allowed Sumer to build monumental architecture, maintain large workforces, and coordinate projects far greater than any single community could achieve. Through taxation, Sumer wove together a society dependent on shared responsibility, an early model of the social contract that continues to define modern states. Beneath Sumer's towering temples and royal palaces stood the workers whose labor built civilization. Thousands of farmers, brickmakers, brewers, potters, and scribes formed the backbone of the Sumerian economy. Remarkably, the first known paystub in human history comes from Sumer, a clay tablet from Uruk recording beer rations given to a laborer. Barley was currency. Beer, oil, and wool were wages. In bustling workshops, scribes tracked every task performed. A laborer who hauled bricks to a construction site might receive a daily ranking of barley and beer. More skilled workers, carpenters, metalworkers, and chariot builders, received larger rations or additional goods, such as wool or oil. Even centuries later, in the era of Hammurabi, laws set standardized wages, suggesting that fairness in compensation was a widely recognized principle. Women worked prominently as brewers and textile producers, forming vital components of the urban workforce. Although slavery existed, most daily labor was performed by free workers who entered contracts for fixed periods. During harvest seasons, estates hired additional workers to manage the increased demand, an early form of seasonal labor. What stands out is continuity. The idea that labor deserves compensation, that workers can negotiate their value, and that society relies on their consistent output, all of this began in Sumer. Whether wages are recorded on clay tablets or digital payslips, the underlying structure of labor exchange has remained surprisingly unchanged for 5 millennia. With economic growth came borrowing and the birth of debt. In Sumer, loans were often made in grain or silver, with interest rates that could reach 20%. A farmer needing seeds for planting might borrow at the start of the season, hoping to repay after the harvest. But if crops failed, the consequences were severe. Families risked losing their fields, livestock, or even their freedom. Debt bondage, working for a creditor to pay off obligations, became a real danger. Cuneiform tablets document these struggles vividly, contracts outlining repayment terms, pleas from widows who owed grain to temple estates, and records of families forced into servitude. Debt inequality threatened the stability of society, concentrating wealth in the hands of elites while impoverishing small farmers. Then came a remarkable solution. At key moments, Sumerian kings issued decrees canceling debts. One of the earliest examples comes from the ruler Urukagina of Lagash, who proclaimed a clean slate, known in Sumerian as amargi, meaning return to mother. This decree freed individuals from debt slavery, restored lost property, and reset social balance. Later Mesopotamian dynasties continued these amnesties, often at a ruler's coronation or after a crisis. The logic was practical. An economy cannot function if its workers are crushed by debt. Sumer's debt forgiveness stands as one of the earliest examples of economic reset policy, a concept that resonates today in modern debates over financial relief and economic justice. Sumer was not an isolated world. From its earliest days, it depended on long-distance trade to acquire resources not found in the river valley. Cuneiform tablets describe commerce with Magan, Dilmun, and Meluha, regions corresponding to Oman, Bahrain, and the Indus Valley. From Magan came copper and stone. From Dilmun came dates and pearls. From Meluha came gold, carnelian, lapis lazuli, and exotic wood. Caravans crossed deserts carrying textiles and grain in exchange for foreign goods. Ships sailed the Persian Gulf, docking at bustling ports like Ur, where foreign merchants arrived with animals, jewelry, and luxury items. Cylinder seals reveal blended iconography, Sumerian symbols alongside Indus motifs, clear evidence of cultural exchange. This system created one of the world's first global trade networks. Goods, ideas, and technologies moved across continents, influencing areas far beyond Mesopotamia. The interconnectedness of Sumer's trade resembles our own global economy, diverse, interdependent, and enriched by distant lands. Though the tools have changed, from caravans to shipping containers, the principle remains identical. Civilizations thrive through cooperation and exchange, a lesson Sumer understood profoundly. Despite its achievements, Sumer was vulnerable to forces beyond human control. Around 2200 BC, a dramatic climate shift brought a prolonged drought to the Near East. Rivers dwindled, crops failed, and famine spread across the land. The Akkadian Empire collapsed under the weight of environmental and social pressure as starving northern populations migrated southward in search of food and refuge. Cities attempted to seal their gates, but hunger and desperation overwhelmed them. Cuneiform laments describe barren fields turned white with salt, families wandering in search of sustenance, and urban centers struggling to survive. This climate catastrophe destabilized the entire region, creating one of history's first recorded societal collapses driven by environmental change. 2 centuries later, the final blow came to Sumer during the collapse of the Third Dynasty. Invading forces, internal economic strain, soil exhaustion, and famine converged. The city of was sacked, its final king captured, and the region fractured into smaller states. Ancient poems such as the Lament for depict cities in ruins and temples abandoned. Sumer's fall offers a sobering lesson. Even advanced civilizations can collapse when economic inequality, environmental stress, and overextension converge. Their fate mirrors concerns of our own time: climate instability, population movement, and systemic fragility. To the Sumerians, economics was intertwined with the divine. Gods governed agriculture, trade, justice, and the natural order. Deities such as Ashnan, Dumuzi, Nisaba, and Utu oversaw grain, livestock, accounts, and fairness. The Anunnaki, a powerful assembly of gods, were believed to decree the fate of humanity and guide prosperity or disaster. Temples functioned as both spiritual and economic centers, managing storage, distribution, and labor under divine authority. Modern interpretations have reimagined these beliefs in dramatic ways. Ancient astronaut theorists suggest the Anunnaki were extraterrestrial beings who came to Earth, shaped early humanity, and influenced Sumerian progress. Although mainstream scholars reject this theory, its popularity stems from the extraordinary leap Sumer made in agriculture, writing, mathematics, and governance. Myths such as the Atra-Hasis epic, where humans are created to relieve the gods of labor, added a supernatural dimension to economic life. These stories reveal how the Sumerians understood their world. They believed that violating fairness, exploiting workers, or hoarding wealth would anger the gods and bring ruin. Whether or not one accepts the mythological interpretations, the underlying message remains powerful. Societies must balance productivity with morality. In their worldview, the divine served as a safeguard against economic injustice, a lesson that continues to resonate today. The story of Sumer is more than a distant chapter in history. It is a mirror reflecting the systems we still live with. Agriculture, taxation, wages, debt, trade, and even financial collapse originated in these ancient cities. Their successes predicted ours, and their failures warn us of familiar dangers. We face similar challenges: environmental stress, economic inequality, complex global networks, and the need for stable governance. From Sumer, we learn that innovation drives progress, but sustainability preserves it. Their agricultural breakthroughs built cities, but soil exhaustion contributed to decline. Their taxation funded infrastructure, but inequality strained the system. Their debt forgiveness preserved economic balance, but repeated crises revealed structural vulnerabilities. And their trade networks enriched society while making it dependent on external stability, much like our world today. Sumer also teaches humility, a civilization that invented writing, urban planning, and economic administration still fell to forces it could not control. Yet its legacy endured, passed on through Babylonia, Persia, Greece, and finally to us. We still read their tablets, use their accounting methods, and live by systems that echo their innovations. The final question is simple: will we learn from their story? The Sumerians rose brilliantly, struggled deeply, and collapsed dramatically. Their tablets whisper a warning across millennia: balance your society, or the balance will be forced upon you.